Okay, I don't have enough time to review and record and edit my review for the thing. So instead, you're going to have this very low effort video that I just thought of. Movie genre tier list. Let's go. Action. Okay, here's the thing. I know there's a lot of good action movies in that some of the best rated movies on Letterboxd and on IMDb are action. And it's such a big genre. It's like, how can you hate it? And I'm just not that into it. I'm sorry. Like, I tried so many times to get into movies, but especially movies that are like only action, I can't get into. And I feel like the reason is, there's just when your entire movie is focused on sort of like physical movement, I often see that a lot of action movies, at least sort of, I guess the more popular ones, like for the sake of action and cool movement and cool violence and all these things, sort of lose a lot of what I like in movies, which is a lot of more like character development and sort of drama between characters and how that plays out. And sure, in some better action movies, the action is there not only just to be thrilling, but also to serve something towards the characters. But it's just not for me. I'm sorry. Look, I'm sure there's some good action movies. There are some good action movies that I like. There's The Matrix. There's, Spider-Man, like Into the Spider-Verse. That was pretty cool. Hot Fuzz is great. But then again, it's Edgar Wright, so of course it's great. It doesn't really change anything. I'm sorry, I'm going to put action. I won't say F, because F is sort of reserved for movies that, I kind of like would just not watch if I know that's the genre. I'm going to put it in D. I'd rather not watch an action movie, but if it's on, whatever. Now, the next one is adventure. Here's the thing. Adventure is very varied because I feel like it contains so many different things. Adventure is a genre that you can just do so much with. You can do so much with it because you can get something like Puss in Boots 2, but you can also get something like Jumanji, and it's like, I don't know. It's very hard for a lot of movies to make an adventure that's varied and also thrilling and exciting, but also sort of connected to some emotional core in one of the characters. Puss in Boots does this very well because they sort of link all these adventures that's happening and they link it back all to Puss in Boots and his fear of death, basically, and how death continues with him throughout all these adventures that he's going on. And sure, the movie does do the real treasure was the friends you made along the way kind of situation. But it's a kid's movie. What can you, this is just a very common theme. You can't hate on it too much. There's still a lot of good in adventure. And sadly, there's also quite a bit of bad. But I think it's just because of how versatile the genre is and how much opportunity there is to make cool shenanigans, I'm going to be putting it in, I'd say, B. And I say B because I wouldn't say it's A. Like, I wouldn't be excited to go watch an adventure movie. But I will say that, if it's one of the genres, I'm not going to complain, basically. The next one is animation. Now, animation is sort of an interesting one because it's a weird thing to call a genre even. I guess it's a genre, but it's just, there's so much that you can do with animation. I know I said this for adventure too, but think about how many different styles of animation there are and how many different kinds of stories you can tell with animation. Like, you have stuff like Turning Red, which is, not great. But then you also have stuff like Perfect Blue, which is like one of the best animation movies I've ever seen. And it'd be hard not to put it anything below an A for me. Even though I don't love every animation movie, I feel like there's so much creativity that goes into animation. There's so much more you can do with animation. You might lose that sort of like real world, real connectedness that you get with live action, but you make up for it in a lot of different ways. And it's really cool how creative people get with animation. It's a really cool medium. And so I'm going to put it in A. I think it's great. I wouldn't put it in S. It's not my favorite, but it's always a good time. Next one is comedy. Now, this one is amazing. I love comedy. I love comedy movies. But would I put it in S? I don't know. Because I feel like S is reserved for movies that it's like, if it's that genre, I'm sort of excited to see it immediately. And I don't really see that with comedy nowadays. Like the movies that are comedy and that do it well immediately become like 10 out of 10s for me. But the problem is it's very hard to. It's very hard to make someone laugh. And sure, if you throw a bunch of fart jokes in there, it'll probably be funny to enough people to sort of sell. But there's too much movies that try to sell themselves as comedy that, to me personally, just aren't that funny. But just out of pure like respect for comedy as like sort of a genre, there's so much good stuff out there. Some of my favorite movies are comedy. And I feel like comedy is more better as like a subgenre. Like there's few movies that I think don't benefit from a little bit of humor. Like American Psycho is great. What a great movie. And I guess it's not purely comedy. Then you'd have The Substance, for example, from this year, which I already reviewed. Has a bit of comedy as well. Immediately makes it much better. And then you have one of my favorites, which is also a recent one, which is Hundreds of Beavers, which is one of the few pure comedy movies that I've really enjoyed. So it's hard to rate comedy because it's a very vague definition because everyone finds different things funny and it's sort of hard to judge it a little bit objectively. Whatever art, it isn't really rated objectively. I don't care. Whatever. I am, however, going to put it at another A tier. And that is because even though not every movie is great from comedy, the movies that are so good that they just sort of break the scale. Now, the next one is crime. I don't really like crime that much. I feel like it's a very obvious thing for movies to be, because obviously, like, if you can't commit crime in real life, why wouldn't you want to see it on screen? It's like, of course, duh. It's fun to see. It's stuff like Pulp Fiction is one of the greatest movies ever made. It's not one of my favorites, but it's still pretty good. You know, Goodfellas, I haven't seen it, but it is one of the greatest movies ever made. Some of the greatest movies ever made are almost always crime. There seems to be something very alluring about crime as a genre. However, whenever a movie is crime, I feel like it can often get into the trap for me where it's just sort of like, here's a thing happens, and then here's another thing that happens, and then another thing happens because the thing happens, and then another thing happens, one more thing happens, and then, you know, it sometimes connects together. If you do a good crime movie, then you sort of have meaning behind the crime that's happening, but a lot of time it can feel like it's just sort of like self-masturbatory, like it's just like, seeing how much like cool crime we can put on screen. Look at this really cool heist that we can pull off. And some people are into that. I'm not as much into that. But it's also just not a bad genre at all. Like there's a lot of good movies that are crime as well. Like for example, like I already mentioned, Pulp Fiction is a great movie. So I'm going to put it in C tier. And I think this is a C tier because it's just, I go kind of either way on. I don't really mind if a movie is crime, but I'm not really going to go up in arms about it, basically. The next one is documentary. I don't know about this one. It's hard really calling it like a film genre because I feel like documentary is sort of its own thing entirely. Because all of these are sort of fiction and this is primarily nonfiction. So I wouldn't even really know how to rate it. I haven't really seen many documentaries. I don't really like the medium that much. I'm going to put it down. I don't know. It's okay. Drama. Drama is another weird one because everything is drama. So, name one movie that isn't drama. The only time that drama is really a drama movie is when what moves the story forward is, like, by far and large. Does that make any sense? But, I don't know. It's always the character, like, drama between them. I know, drama, it says it in the name. Whatever. Drama. There's a lot of really good movies that are drama. For example, Whiplash, incredible. I love that movie. I'm trying to... I love this genre. I can't think of any more movies. I don't know. There's so many good ones. Look, I'll pull up my Letterboxd or something. I'm sure there's a lot of good ones there. Whatever. Drama's a great genre. And it just, because it isolates everything that I love about movies, which is really strong characters. Like, more than anything, if you don't have characters that I care about, it's very hard for me to like for a movie. I don't like very many movies that are just plot focused rather than character focused. I love when what drives the story is character and theme rather than plot and spectacle, right? And hey, for some people they like that. It's just not for me. That's why I put action so low. But even though drama doesn't have literally every movie being a banger, I feel like there's so much to come out of drama where I just have to give it an S. Now, fantasy. Might be a bit of a spicy take. I don't like fantasy almost at all. In fact, if you tell me that a movie is fantasy, there's a high chance I just won't like it, just based on that alone, which seems kind of weird because I put animation so high and I praised it for, being like varied and for having a lot of opportunity to do a lot of cool shit. And fantasy has all that. The problem is that animation, a lot of times, it feels, I don't know, I really can't tell you why, but there's something about fantasy that's always icky to me. There are some good fantasy movies. Like, one comes to mind would be Caroline. I'm not sure if that counts as fantasy. I guess that also is animation. Whatever. I don't really like fantasy that much. I wouldn't turn off a movie if it's fantasy. But it's like, I don't know. It's not for me. I'm sorry. I'm going to put it in D, I think. There is some good fantasy, but for me, when I watch movies, I really watch it to see strong characters that are really rooted in reality. I don't really like super fantastical movies. I like movies that are sort of grounded in real life. So fantasy sort of throws all of that out the window, which a lot of people love. I don't really like that much. I like it when it can feel like this could happen to me in some way. I know not all movies fit this rule, but I like it when it's sort of based in reality. So that's where it's going to go. Next one is history. History is another weird one because it seems strange as a genre because it seems more like a backdrop. Like, you can have all of these genres. You can have history action, history fantasy, history crime, history adventure. It's just sort of a genre that I doesn't really feel like a genre that much. I don't know. It's weird. Why is it a genre? It shouldn't be a genre. Why? It's history. It's just like things that happened already, but a long time ago, kind of. Whatever. I'm going to put it in C because I just don't really have much opinion on it. The only history movie I could think of, I guess, is like Army of Darkness, technically speaking. It's set in the medieval times. But I just don't have much opinion on it. Now, the big one. Horror. I love this genre, obviously. I mean, I've only made 2 videos so far, and they're all horror. And I'll continue to do that. Because horror is by far S tier. And it's weird because there's a lot of horror movies that I really don't like. And it's a very hit or miss genre. There's no other genre for me that when I hear that it's one of the genres, I immediately go to watch it. I keep up with horror more than I keep up with any other genre. And horror has such a cool fan base, and it has such a potential to explore a lot of really interesting things that a lot of the others don't really explore. Like, what other genre can you really push the boundaries of movies like horror can? Like something like Terrifier, like the Terrifier franchise, for example, which I did a review on. It can't really exist in those other genres because why would you have like horrific and disturbing things happening in comedy or in animation or adventure? It would kill the vibe. And sure, maybe this is like sort of self-defining, like horror is defined by being disturbing and pushing boundaries, whatever, maybe. But that's why I like it. There's so much opportunity to do cool things. And some of my favorite movies are horror. In fact, I'm just going to put it on the top right here. In fact, these 2 top, horror, drama, always best combination. Horror with a little bit of drama is always going to be better than just horror for me. Almost always. Next. Musical. I think without discussion, this is going in F tier. I'm sorry, I cannot stand musicals. I think this is the one genre where I see that it's a musical and I will not watch it. I refuse. I think I've only ever seen one musical that I liked. And that's, I think, La La Land. La La Land was, again, pretty good. But it was only pretty good and not amazing because it was a musical. And sure, some people would say, oh, well, Whiplash is a musical. It's like, kind of, but it has music in it, I guess. But a lot of movies, a lot of movies have music in them, doesn't make them musicals. And the biggest ick I have with musicals for me is that I really want to be immersed in movies. There's something about musicals that don't sit right with me because, like, there's supposed to be a deep emotional scene where two characters are revealing their love to each other. It's like, I love you. I know I should have told you from the beginning, but I'm telling you now. And then suddenly, I love... It ruins it completely. And I'm saying this as a person who loves music. I just think musicals that sort of do these big numbers and sing songs as part of the narrative is just so off-putting to me in so many different ways. This is by far my least favorite genre. If you like musicals, more power to you. I can't stand them. I'm sorry. Okay, next. Mystery. Now, mystery is a weird one because I don't really like movies that are only mystery, but it's always a nice little addition to another genre. Like, horror mystery is normally cool because as well as being sort of scared, you're also waiting for the next reveal and you're confused about what's going on, and that it's a really good way to hook the audience. It's just such a cool way to do twists, and I love twists in movies. It just makes everything so much better. Like, Knives Out is really good, and it works because, like, there's these slow reveals and it's immediately hooks you in. It's almost like a bit cheating, right? You think that if you just add a mystery into a movie, then it's immediately good. But no, mystery is hard to write. It's hard to make a good mystery movie. Even so, even though it's not one of my favorite genres, if I see it in a movie, it's a pleasant surprise. I like it. Romance. Okay. I have a bit of a strange relationship with romance movies. And it's not because I don't like them because I'm a guy and I'm afraid that it'll be girly, okay? I'm not weird like that, all right? I'm not an Andrew Tate fan. I like watching lovey-dovey scenes where two characters fall in love. I cry at movies. It happens. The problem is that as a person who has gone through, painful breakups, singular for me, I guess, as many people have, it's so annoying to see that every single romance movie is the most perfect possible romance. I know that it's what people want to see, but I feel like relationships are so complicated and so nuanced that it's disappointing that people don't really explore that concept as much. There's movies like Titanic, which I thought was pretty good. La La Land, like I already mentioned, was pretty good. The one romance movie that I liked is Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. At least the one I really liked. And that's because it did exactly that. It took sort of the romance genre and explored love in a really interesting way that actually said something about its subject matter and didn't just throw two attractive people together and made them fall in love. Of course, Kate Winslet and Jim Carrey are both two attractive people because it's Hollywood. It's the movie industry. If you're attractive, you're going to be in movies. Whatever. I'm just disappointed in romance as a genre, and because there are enough good movies where, I wouldn't completely be against it. I'm not going to put it as low as musical, but I will say it's still an F tier for me. It's bizarre that one of my favorite movies ever is of the romance genre, but I'm still putting it in F tier. But just out of principle, I don't find it that interesting. I'm sorry. There's just not that many good romance movies. Maybe in the future I'll see more and I'll prefer the genre. Maybe, but as of now, I don't really like it that much. Sci-fi. Sci-fi it's again the same problem I sort of have with fantasy, where I don't like the style of sci-fi that's like sort of Star Wars, where it seems like, the focus of it is obviously the cool set pieces and the sort of new feeling you get when you see something cool, you see a big spaceship and you see laser beams, and all of these things are cool as shit. I get it. I love some laser beams in movies. There's a lot of good sci-fi, a lot of not so great sci-fi. It's just that for me, when a movie revolves around sort of things that are more science fiction-y, I often don't like it as much. I like it when movies are grounded in reality. There are good sci-fi movies. Like, I'd say, well, Eternal Sunshine is technically sci-fi. Black Mirror, okay, that's not really a movie, but it is a series that is science fiction. It is dystopian sci-fi, and it is one of my favorites, if not my favorite TV series. And it's good. It has some charm to it. I'm not going to discredit a movie because it's sci-fi. I wouldn't personally go for it, so I'm going to put it in C tier. I'm going to say it's all right. It's okay. I don't mind it. I'm just not going to go see it in theaters. Now, the next one is thriller. Thriller is a weird genre because I don't really know what thriller really means. I think the definition is something like a movie that is exciting and suspenseful and thrilling. But horror is already all of those things. So, for me, I see thriller as sort of horror, but it more exciting and less scary. When I think of the ultimate thriller, I think of something like Fight Club. And it's definitely a really good thriller. I really like it. I wouldn't say thriller is as good as something like horror for me because it's missing that sort of edge that horror has. Which is why horror and thriller together work really well. Horror thrillers are amazing. But as a genre by itself, I don't find it to be like incredible, but I do think it is a cool genre. And I think there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with it. Especially because there's just, I don't know, it's hard because I don't really know what thriller is, so all I'm going off of is the movies that I've seen that are labeled as thriller. So I'm going to say out of the movies I have seen that are thriller, they're pretty good. I like them. They're okay. So I'm going to put them in A tier. I think A tier is pretty fitting. Now, war movies. Maybe this is a hot take. I kind of hate war movies. Like a lot, actually. They're probably second least favorite after musical. I've only seen a few war movies. I'm not a big war movie guy. I haven't seen many, I guess. But from the few that I've seen, I feel like the genre tends to sort of repeat itself a lot. And it feels like a lot of the war movies I've seen do this thing where they're like, I'm going to show the tragedies of war. And that's good, and that's a good message to send across if it was like 1958. But it's 2024. Like, war movie number 170 billion is just the same thing again. It's really good for making cinematic scenes, you know? Everyone knows about the war to some extent, you know? So it's just very cinematic. So I guess that's why a lot of people go with it. But for me, I just find it very samey and to the point of being like sort of harmful in a sense because, you know, there's so many war movies that seem to just make war cool and they do all these heroes and it seems almost like propaganda. There are some movies that don't do that, like Come and See, for example. But even then, I just find the subject matter to be a bit repetitive. There's almost nothing new that I see come from war movies, really. There's, you know, it's always just like the soldier that comes into the war and he's optimistic and he's going to fight for his country, but then he realizes war is actually bad and it's violent and shit, and it is. And, you know, it's obviously very sad to see, and it's a good representation of the times that it's trying to do in general. But for me, I don't really find much of any value in war movies, so I'm going to put it in F. And now the last one is Western. What's weird is I have seen quite a few movies, and yet I've seen almost no Westerns. I barely sort of know what the genre really looks like, so I wouldn't even know how to rate it. Technically speaking, Rango is a Western, so I did like that movie quite a lot. I thought it was cool. But I haven't seen enough where I can feel like I can rate it. So I'm going to put it in, I don't know. Well, that was a tier list. This is what we got. I'm pretty happy with this. I think this is pretty accurate to what I think. I hope this was cool. And if you want more super unique and creative and really like interesting content like movie genre tier list, then you should like and subscribe right now or your balls will explode immediately. Goodbye.